Hello, everyone. My interview tonight is with Mr. Samuel Egube, the Honorable Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budgeting for Lagos State. We're going to be talking about how do we get the economy working again post-COVID-19. Honorable Commissioner, thank you so much for finding the time to speak with me today. I know how busy you are, but I interviewed Mr. Governor last week, and we touched a little bit on the economy, but not much. And I felt it was important to reach out to you and say, please, can we just talk about how do we get our economy working again post-COVID? Because this has an impact on every single human being that lives and works in Lagos State, as well as anyone that wants to do and conduct business with the state. Obviously, there's a global pandemic. It's affected everyone. Businesses are closed. And yes, it's about survival right now. But how do we, what are the things that we need to do to get our economy working again? So I'm not an economist by any, stretch of the imagination. I'm an entrepreneur, like like many people in Lagos and across the world who are concerned about their businesses and concerned about how do they get their businesses back to where they should be. So how do we get our economy working again? So based on that, how are you prioritizing the return to normality or the new normal?
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's always a question I get asked all the time. How do we get the economy running again? Interestingly, the economy, it's very foundational to our living a very comfortable life. So when the economy is not working for a lot of people, life becomes very uncomfortable.
Yes.
But it's also very important that we understand that the economy is run by people like you. It's not run by government. It's run by entrepreneurs who have taken risks and made significant investments, have employed labor, are putting in technology behind their business and trying to run and gain efficiencies.
Yes.
Now, what government's role is really is to then ensure that the environment, the common spaces, the rules around which we operate, and the policy instruments that guide our communal living and our rules of engagement are supportive of business.
Of course. But as you say, that you need to provide us with that, if I look at myself, if I take myself as an entrepreneur, as you said, we're the ones that, obviously bring all the ginger to the economy and all of that. But right now, my business is not operational. Or a part of my business is not. As you know, EbonyLife, we opened EbonyLife Place a few months ago, and we're one of the sectors that are worst hit. So the cinemas are not functioning, the restaurants are not functioning, the hotel obviously is not functioning because people are not traveling, so we don't have any guests. So, how does someone like me, even though I am responsible and I'm an entrepreneur responsible for running my own business, but I can't do anything right now because of the situation of things. And I know that, in my research and saying, okay, how will we get the economy back to where it needs to go? Maybe we can look at an update on critical areas like, disease, we need to get disease under control. We need to get healthcare capacity sorted, virus monitoring, the business preparedness and communication. So as I am struggling as a business entrepreneur now, how do you get my business working again?
Okay, so that is where I was going to, right? To say that the first thing is to understand that these businesses that we all run, both the business of government and the business in the marketplace, they are driven by people who have done most of the time a very good job at it. Mm-hmm. Right? And that is why they've gotten to where they've gotten to for those who are successful at it. Mm-hmm. What we have just experienced is a shock that has affected every one of us, both those of us in business and both those of us who are in government. And one of the things around shocks is that once you have a great business continuity plan, you are able to withstand the shock, so that the shock, right, hits you less than it would have hit you if you were unprepared. Now, there are several sectors that have been affected very harshly. In some sectors, harsher than others. Some other sectors have have now come to the front of the limelight, because it is the operation of those sectors that are keeping the entire environment running. So what typically should happen, it's a matter of risk and a matter of investment, okay, and a matter of keeping consumption going. Because if people do not consume your goods and services, then you begin to go down. And that is one of the things that the lockdown threatens to unleash on us all. So one of the ways to look at it, first of all, is to say, look, which businesses are flourishing, right? And because I'm not speaking to you alone, I'm speaking to a variety of people, right?
All the sector, please, yes.
Exactly. So you find out that you have the telecoms business is flourishing because people can still communicate, and it's more around technology. You have the technology space also flourishing, because technology is what is required now to provide solutions that make social distancing workable, right? You also have e-commerce tending to flourish with a slight limitation on logistics in terms of how they can move goods from place to place. So you see, for example, the shares of Amazon going up, and a lot of activities with e-commerce business. But they will also have challenges about how do we continue to stock, because the supply chain that feeds us in is kind of frustrated at this point in time. Now, on the other end, you have challenges, right? So this is supposed to be a great time for airlines if you look at the energy hits, because the cost of energy prices is going down. But because people are unable to move, that constraint in movement has then hit very harshly our airline industry and the entire hospitality and tourism sector.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, of course, there's a lot of pressure on the health sector, and it's a demand pressure, actually. So it's possible also that on the pharmaceutical side, subject to the limitations that the supply chain brings, they will be stable or rising, especially if their products are products required for times like this. So what I basically will encourage businesses is that there is a new change in our environment. Some technology company called me to say, look, they are saving about 37% of their cost, because now their energy cost out of their head office has gone down. Their other overhead costs are going down because people are able to work from home. So for me, looking at it from the economic perspective is to say, look, what do I need to do to get the economy running? To get the economy running, we need to get people working. To get people working, it means we need to plan to stimulate areas of the economy that employ the most people, right? Some areas might be
employ the most people under the current circumstances, right?
Under the current circumstances.
Okay.
And you know, you also need to prepare for a post-COVID era as well. So you don't come from a shock and run into another shock because you are unprepared for the new normal after COVID eases out. So if you take, for example, let's take hotels, let's take guest houses, so right now it will look like it's doomsday for them. But have they thought about the possibility of participating in the demand push that is coming from the health sector, for example? Can they play any parts in participating in becoming isolation centers? Because what is hoteling about? It's about hosting people. And abroad, you find hotels built side by side, major hospitals.
But you
so
know,
when the bed...
I don't want to interrupt you, but you know, one of the major challenges there is, you know, we live in a country that stigmatization is strong. So now, let's say, for example, I can take myself as an example. I turned the White Fit Hotel into an isolation center, right? And I let people come in with COVID-19 and I'm isolating them and everybody's fine. What post-COVID, people are not going to come to want to stay there because they, you know, the mentality is, oh my God, is the COVID still there? Even though we know that it's not, even though you've told people that you've sanitized. So I'm just saying that, again, maybe that's about communication.
So more, let's take that point and probe it a little bit further.
Okay.
Right? One of the things you do so well, and most people in your field do so well, is the ability to communicate in a manner that points people in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have described is an industry challenge that the hospitality business will be going.
Yes.
So I think the way they should then think is, how do we lead people through communication strategies in a manner that this thing that looks like a stigmatization issue becomes something that we embrace, as these are the champions. When we all as a society went into trouble, these guys held out and held our isolation people, and maybe because of that, they should patronize you.
Possibly.
Now, so how do we push that agenda from the communication standpoint?
Okay.
So the truth I would say is that the challenges are enormous, and I kid you not, they are not easy challenges. You have very low oil price regimes.
Yes.
Some of those oil points are points almost equal to or higher than our cost oil.
Yes.
We have almost over 80-something% of the world's production grinding to a halt. China is down, Europe is down, America is down, and Nigeria is really import dependent.
Yes.
Right? Our people can't go to farms, or even if they go to farm, because of the lockdown, you can't move food around. Right? Now, all of those are challenges, and they are not light challenges. But I think it is the leadership that we need to show. Right? That leadership we need to show to, as business leaders, to navigate people out of this big challenge. That is where our victory will come from.
That's why we're having this conversation, because what I want is for us to be able to, I want people to see this interview and go away saying, okay, fine, there's a possible solution to my challenge. And that's, you know, so if we can just kind of talk about the fact that, yes, there is a challenge. We know that many sectors can't run their businesses effectively. We know that, you know, in terms of resources, financial resources, a lot of people are limited. Some people are working from home. Some people can't pay salaries because, you know, they have no income to pay. So people are dealing with a whole load of issues around keeping their own infrastructure going so that the state's infrastructure can run. As you said, we're the ones that are keeping the economy going ultimately at the end of the day.
One of the big changes which we are going through is the fact that we need to begin to rethink our role as business leaders, and also begin to relook at the role of government and the kind of partnerships that are required by both to make things happen. So where we are going is not a point where the private sector thinks government will deliver everything, and where government also knows, right, that they must partner the private sector to deliver things, which is why at the heart of our strategy in government, we had said that we're going to run an open government, and a government that is going to be heavily participatory. And through this period, we have been engaging, Mr. Governor and his team have been engaging with the private sector in many ways, so that jointly we would think through what we need to do and come out with solutions. So I can tell you that at the heart of a recession is job losses, right? And when it is happening in that direction, one of the things you do in government is to then reprioritize your budget. Is to say, which sectors should I encourage? Which sector should I move money from? How do I create the environments and the systems that make things work? Some of the things we've seen in this period is that, look, food security is important. And which is why in the way we administered the lockdown, we felt we needed to give safe passage to food companies, right? And to logistic companies moving food from one place to the other. Now, with a lot of engagement between the private sector and government, we're able to, declassify or bring more of those safe passages in so that our production can begin. But there are other issues as well. There are issues around imports. There are issues around input material, the supply chain services. So what businesses should then begin to think about is, maybe this is the time when I need to begin to rethink my input materials? How much of it can I get locally? How much of it must I import? And how do I reduce my dependence? Because all of this was not prepared for.
Exactly.
In Japan, for example, where we did just-in-time stock, just-in-time stock is not working at this point in time. So you need to begin to rethink your stocking principles, you know, to be able to drive.
Of course, yeah. There's big arguments against globalization versus, you know, regionalization, and that was one of the questions. And of course, there must be an opportunity now, as you said, in the value chain, to continue to look at certain things that were being imported should now be produced locally. So yes, we must continue to look at those opportunities. But I mean, I hear you that, you know, we have to look inwards and say, okay, for the sectors where we can't operate now, how do we creatively find ways in which we can be of use to someone else that is currently operating, or how can we be of use to the current crisis that is ongoing? Should, for example, my hotel becomes a place whereby it can become an isolation center, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess it's for us to relook at all the, you know, the various challenges we have and say, how can we rethink that? Yes, I hear you.
But I must tell you, this rethinking, as simple as it is very challenging. And it's the reason why, in dealing with our previous problems, some businesses were successful and some were not.
Yeah.
Now, if this is the new way the world will look, which businesses will thrive? How will you redirect your investment as an investor?
Yeah.
Is the question that we are trying to answer. So certainly not all forms of businesses will flourish at times like this, but livelihood must continue and people must be alive, and we must therefore direct our businesses in the direction in which the current needs of our society is presenting.
So in a nutshell, just so that people are clear, to get our economy working again, what you're saying is we need to focus our energies on those sectors whereby we know right now that is where there is activity. So telecoms, IT, healthcare, food. You're saying that that's really where the focus should be, and people should.
That is one way.
People should lock in.
The second way is that there are services people used to enjoy before now, but they can't because they cannot move around typically. Now, could delivery processes get those services to them in a different way? We must also figure out how to deliver the services which we provide to the users, because the users can't come to us as they used to.
Yeah.
And that requires new sets of solutions and new sets of skills. And I think we now need to begin to train ourselves differently for the needs of the society. So I'm a good tailor and all my customers used to come. Now they can't come, and therefore they can't see my new great designs. The one who is average tailor but can communicate digitally to customers through Instagram begins to win the day. So it is the entire chain that we must look at and try to improve it to today's world.
But let's
on the part of government.
The key takeaway from that point I was making is that in order for you to get the economy working again, you're just saying that we should focus, emphasis will be focused on, but even how does government even interface with that? Because if we know that it's food that's working, if we know it's tech that's working, and we know it's telecoms that's working, what does government do to support those businesses anyway?
Okay, I'll tell you. So I'm delighted because as I look back today, it would mean that Mr. Governor saw the future coming. Because when we designed our themes agenda, really nothing needs to change on the themes agenda. We just need to prioritize because those objectives remain true today. We said to ourselves that education must go beyond the four walls of the place, and we must need to find out how to leverage technology to deliver education. Lagos is a small place. You can't continue to build schools all around to accommodate the increasing population. We talked about telemedicine. You can't always move now to see a doctor. So we just launched telemedicine, right? Lagos just did that, right? During this period, a lot of our education centers continued some form of education using the internet, using our radio stations, and using different learning platforms, right? We also have signed a PPP arrangement, right, to build 3,000 kilometers of broadband, high-speed internet access around Lagos. What that means is that some of the frustrations you face from the sluggishness of the internet through video and voice becomes much faster.
We definitely need to resolve that, because there's no way
Exactly.
to exist in this new world without those issues being
resolved. So that is going on.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about our health system. Now, we are getting a bigger challenge from health than we anticipated. But the strategy does not really change. Now, we had seen ahead before now and had built capacity in the infectious disease management system, right? It's the only reason why we did not get overrun. Now, of course, that capacity needs to grow, and we will continue to do that. One of the things that make health viable is that there's a demand side to it and there's a supply side to it. A demand side in the sense that people are able to go to the hospitals. If people are not able to go to the hospitals, like some other businesses are failing now because people can't go and buy from them, for any reason, maybe they don't have enough money or all that, they begin to fail. So the Lagos insurance system would then encourage that people can go there and the hospitals can expect to be paid. And they can then focus on standards, basically, because they know that people will come and be paid. So we're trying to strengthen the Lagos insurance scheme, which is supposed to be a mutually mitigating scheme for all Lagosians, right? And we are also trying to rehabilitate our primary health care center. What is happening is that everybody troops to a secondary or a tertiary health center. So we are strengthening that. And this COVID pandemic has given us the opportunity to focus very intensely on our healthcare system and on our healthcare personnel. So you see that the bonuses for them have increased. You know, we have hazard allowance for them because they are going through intensity of work. The Bagada Center has just been opened, 110 beds. Those are capacities that are coming on stream to support that entire health system. And hopefully, I mean, as these demands rise, our private health care systems working with us would expand their capacity. And so there's a lot of training going on to adapt to this new normal.
So just to go back to where we were, again, it's about prioritizing, and government's role in that is to say that, okay, this is where we need to put our focus on, because these are the sectors that we know right now are working generally, and therefore we should just make sure that we continue to work, you know, with those sectors. But if I could...
You have a point there, Mo. You have a point that I bet you are missing one more point.
Okay.
It's not only choosing sectors that are thriving. We also need to choose new skills, because some other sectors are not thriving because the new skill requirements
are not there,
do not exist with those entities.
That takes me on to the question I was going to ask next, which is about how do we even diversify our economy? Because ultimately, you know, what we've seen over the last few months is that the drop in oil prices is totally affecting Nigeria. We've been a mono-product economy forever and ever. We need to really move out of that and diversify our economy. Now, of course, this is a global, you know, it's a Nigeria-wide problem, but in terms of how it affects Lagos State, which is a massive part of Nigeria, in terms of its contributions to Nigeria, how do we diversify? Is there a strategy to diversification? Because, you know, it's very cliche to just say, let's diversify the economy. So it's not like magic that it's just going to happen. So here I am sitting in my house, I'm doing a job today, or my current skills are no longer required, or my current occupation or profession or business is no longer required because post-COVID it's not necessary. What's global best practice? Can you share with us on how economies are diversified?
Okay, so I will just tell you that we shall just a bit of a response to the skill part of it. We are going to be responding and mobilizing with our Lagos State Employment Trust Fund to engage. And we have our Women and Poverty Alleviation Ministry. We have our Wealth Creation Ministry. They will engage very aggressively to build skill at the lower level, all kinds of technical skill that helps people adapt to the new normal. But coming back to your main question, which is that of diversification.
Mm-hmm.
Now, diversification has been on the plate for a long time. We've tried import substitution. We've tried to drive export, and we've done all of that. But there's been a lot of failure on leadership and consistencies in policies nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been happening for ages.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go to China, you will see how they developed. And at certain point in time, you know, I mean, we were in companies that started out signing with Peugeot to produce Peugeot in China and produce Volkswagen this same year like us.
Mm-hmm.
That same year, that same period, we did the aluminium smelting company. We did all the LMA petrochemicals. We did the fertilizer plants, but we mismanaged them.
Yeah.
All of those are diversification. We did the Ajakuta steel,
Yes.
the Alaja steel, the Oshobo steel rolling mill. Those were thoughts around diversification. We did feed the nation.
So we didn't see.
So if you are not consistent with your policies,
yeah. We didn't see any of it through.
Yes. So that speaks to policy consistency, leadership, and management. Yeah. But Lagos is a little bit different, you know. Lagos is diversified. So in Lagos, you will have the oil industry here, you have the telecoms here, because we've created an environment that makes it cool, right? When you look at the equidistance from offshore Lagos to some of those platforms out there, and the fact that our ports are working all throughout 24 hours, it makes Lagos an advantageous point, and it has attracted the oil industry here. It has everything. Manufacturing is here, the fashion industry. This is the entertainment headquarters, I believe, of Africa. This is the Nollywood headquarters of Africa. The media studio, they are all here. The print houses are all here. So we are pretty much diversified. And you see that because our internally generated revenue is over 65% of our total revenue. It's not happening anywhere else, which is why businesses are very important to us. So Lagos is not more about government. In fact, actually, government in Lagos is about business and it's about Lagosians. So it's the reason why we keep listening to our businessmen and our business people, because if we do not serve them, right, they have a choice. So we need to create a better environment for them. We are trying to improve on the ease of doing business.
What is the choice?
Right?
What is the choice? What choice do we have?
You can move your businesses to Ghana because Lagos competes with countries nowadays.
When it comes to diversification, we can tick the box. What you're saying is that Lagos doesn't need to diversify any more than it already is?
I would say that, yes, we are in all the sectors. Of course, when I say we're in all the sectors, does not mean we can't have more players in each of those sectors. What it also means, right, is that we need to begin to set new barriers or new hurdles to cross, because the competition now for Lagos is not Nigeria, right? The competition now for Lagos will be the most efficient cities around Africa and around the world.
Yeah.
Right? It's the reason why we know that we need to get our broadband fiber through very quickly. The reason why we must ensure that our roads are going on, and we must begin to embrace technology in what we are doing, in everything we are doing, so that we can get skills also from all over the world to do projects in Lagos and get our people in Lagos doing projects all around the world.
So will there be incentives? Will Lagos State offer businesses incentives to come into the state if we're looking at expanding that diversification?
So certainly all of these things I've said are the incentives businesses require to come and stay in Lagos, to make the relating with government very easy. We have an entire special advisor, a whole office, cabinet ranking, that looks after investments coming into Lagos and helps facilitate it around the world. We have an SSA who is in charge of people in the diaspora, right? A diaspora office. We have a cabinet ranking position responsible, right? That is in addition to every other thing we are doing.
So what you're saying,
we must give those incentives. We must make it easy for people to do businesses, to do their business in Lagos.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I hear you say is that Lagos is ready post-COVID to take on the challenges, come what they may. And you're saying to anyone out there that wants to come to do business in Lagos that the opportunities are there. But the only thing I am struggling with at the moment is those businesses that have to reinvent themselves because come post-COVID, their businesses will not, because Lagos, for example, is an event-driven city. It's event-driven. And I mean, from all the different predictions and forecasts that I am seeing, events and socialization as we know it is not going to be a part of our day-to-day lives for the next maybe 12 to 24 months. So how do we get Lagos buzzing again by being that destination for many things that we know that it is a destination for? Maybe, are you saying we need to just put those things on hold for the next 24 months and we just focus on those sectors that you mentioned earlier that are working?
One of the things that must change is our realization that we must participate in our own rescue. And that participation requires that you need to rethink your business. So the question is, if Lagos was an event bustling place, how will people do events in the new world or in the new Lagos, in the new order? And what can they do leveraging their existing assets, right? To deploy, maybe that event center needs to be broken down into smaller places so people can gather in much smaller. I mean, there are all kinds of ideas, but that is the challenge of the genius, which Lagosians are known for. We are known as a very ingenious people. It's the center for excellence. This is the time that excellence should show in our creativity and the way we maneuver challenges and prepare to serve the new needs that are emerging, and tool our people with the new skills that are being required, and search forward with a lot of confidence, right? That we can actually together build a greater Lagos, irrespective of the challenges that we have faced.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to quickly, before we round up, take you back to the fact that in order for us to get our economy working again, we must get the disease of COVID-19 under control. We must have healthcare working. We must be able to keep monitoring this virus. And the fact that Lagos State also still has some sense of communicating with all of us, and so that we understand policy and procedures and guidelines on the things we can and cannot do. Because I guess that's the responsibility of government. Whilst we focus on how we run our businesses, the role of the state really is in those areas. You're not the commissioner for health, of course, but to a certain extent, we need to make sure that we need to make sure that we have things under control, because we can't see anything opening up or things going back to normal now until that is sorted. So we need to get those 5 things under control. And
you're right. And one of the things you realize that Lagos was most proactive. Before all of this happened, we declared a new organization. We had an incident commander, which is Mr. Governor himself, and the Commissioner of Health as his deputy to drive the entire system. We have a war cabinet. We have a digital platform on which we have meetings and take decisions very quickly. We have new processes to be able to respond to approvals and all of that, so that we are able to act very nimbly, even though we are government, very quickly, and intervene in the areas which we need to. But not beyond that. It is a fight. And even though you have one goal, from time to time as things change, your tactical maneuvers must be perfect. And that is why every day, every here and now, you hear Mr. Governor tweeting, you hear him facing the press, giving updates, changing direction from time to time. And that is just how it goes to be successful in a very turbulent time such as this. We will just encourage our business people to understand that it is a time of turbulence, and their minds also must be quick to adapt, right? We, on the part of government, will continue to support businesses and put money where money needs to go, and stimulate people to learn the right type of skills to cope in this turbulent environment, and then to put cash, right, in terms of palliative, because there are a lot of weak people also in the society, people that are unable, they are vulnerable, not weak. They are just vulnerable, right? They are poor, right? They are in the least position to fight.
Yes.
And government from time to time will intervene. The last time we intervened over 350 households, which is about 1.2 million people. It's a big, Lagos is big with 22 million people.
Yes.
It's a challenge, but it's just our view and our belief, and it's working actually, that when government partners with the private sector, we do much greater things. And if you notice, despite the intervention of government, you had private sector people partnering directly with government, but also intervening directly in their communities.
Absolutely.
Right? To keep the entire system. That is the spirit of Lagos.
Absolutely.
And that is what we hope to see in its renaissance after COVID.
I mean, the reason why I didn't focus my questions on poverty alleviation was because you've mentioned that it's about how we now need to find a way to scale vocational training, and you're getting the trust fund, the NISTF trust fund working, so that because I mean the lockdown made it obvious to all of us about the fact that people were hungry for a long time. People just, some people are surviving on a day-to-day basis. They earn their money today and they use that money to eat today. And if there's a lockdown and I can't go out and buy food, then how do I survive? So we saw a lot of that in our society. And, I'm not saying that it's government's job to resolve every poor person's situation, but we do need to say, how do we equip our youth? And how do we equip the vulnerable with a skill set to be able to go out and start a small business and earn a living? And I think those are the types of things that government has to facilitate to happen.
And we shall do that. So, for example, we are going to focus a lot on very high employment agricultural mechanisms to get people to work, right? Because you are trying to solve for two things. You are trying to solve for food security and you are trying to solve for employment. Yeah. So we'll do a lot in that area. We're also going to invest a lot in all of the soft skill initiatives that I had mentioned to you, the Employment Trust Fund. We're going to put much money behind that, because if the people are skilled, then they will adapt to the new economy. Absolutely. But also, thirdly, I think it's my responsibility to also provide a voice to enterprise and to businesses to say, look, yes, the headwind is strong. Let us be able to maneuver, let's be able to retool and change our focus. Let's not be married too much to the way we did things in the past. There must be new ways of doing things in this new normal.
Absolutely. The new normal. Yeah. That's the new slang now, the new normal all over the world. But we have to join that race and be part of the new normal. I mean, I think also we need to look at the opportunities. I mean, for me, I like to be optimistic and say, okay, from this, what are the opportunities that we need to look at and that can come from that? And that's kind of where my headspace is right now, I guess, But I wanted to just say thank you so much for the time. Thank you for shedding light on the priorities of the state and the role that the state will play in obviously getting the economy working again. Now, I mean, obviously, as you said, it's ongoing now, and obviously post-COVID. Yeah. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure spending this time with you. Thank you. And I thank everybody who has watched. I hope they have benefited.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm grateful. Thank you. My regards. Bye for now. Bye.
Bye.